Tonight, I am so proud to announce that I have Rome Diesel. And I asked him to be on the show tonight because we've been covering fluoride in the water. We've been talking about GMOs. And I was at the rally for the city council on Wednesday trying to get them to vote yes on Proposition 37 to label genetically modified organisms in our food. And lo and behold, this little kid comes up towards the end and he gives this speech, which we're very blessed. He's going to deliver it to us tonight, that literally got it got the house so excited. He got a standing ovation. We just went crazy over him clapping, and he motivated, I would like to say that he literally shamed these people into a unanimous vote to support labeling our foods. So welcome, Rome Diesel. We've also got tonight our divine Dr. Sarah Larsen, who's back with us. We've got, and I wanted to say we're going to be talking about indigo children, and I'll explain that in a minute, but Rome is our little indigo child for tonight. We had Dr. Sarah's indigo daughter last week, and we've got another indigo child in the house, Daniel James Franklin, who wrote a novel that was published when he was 16 years old that's dealing with suicide and drug addiction and redemption. These are issues that are plaguing our young people today. So thank you guys for joining us tonight. We also have on the line Kim Michaels. Kim, are you there? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to have you join us. We are going to be looking at the effects of fluoride on creativity and on our imagination, and how it separates us from others and separates us from source energy. And I know you're going to have some wonderful input for us tonight in terms of solutions to all of these problems that are created, like ADD, attention deficit disorder with children, because of the poisons and the toxins in our food, in our water, and in our air. And I know, Kim, you guys are very blessed in Europe and 40 other countries not to have GMO foods.
Not to have fluoride.
Not to have fluoride in your water. But we're suffering from being dumbed down in America because of fluoride, and it's causing a lowering of consciousness. So we need some help with this. But first, Rome, I would like to say thank you so much, and thank you to Rome's mother. What's your first name?
Nikki.
Nikki.
Hi, Parthenia, thank you for having us.
And thank you for fighting the traffic and getting him over here. And Rome, would you tell us how old you were when you started being a social activist?
5.
5. And what inspired you? What on earth got a 5-year-old, wanting to get up and protest?
Well, when I was 5 years old, my mother was working on Proposition 2.
Which was what? What was that about?
It was for animals to be able to, factory farm animals to be able to move around in their cages.
How about that? Yeah. Wonderful cause. And so how did that affect you, Proposition 2, when you heard about it?
I was really upset, and I asked if I could help.
Oh.
And my mom said, "Your little voice is big enough to change the world."
Oh my God. And it did. On Wednesday, he changed the world, getting the city council to vote unanimously to support Proposition 37. And what I've been pointing out, and Daniel is one of my former students, that one person can make a difference. And it's always been one person. And you did make a difference on Wednesday. So I would love it very much if you could, before you give us the speech that brought the house down on Wednesday, would you tell us what made you want to get involved in Proposition 37, which is labeling our foods, whether they're GMO or not, for the audience?
Well, first of all, I don't think man should own the seed of life.
I agree. Amen.
Yes.
And second of all, I'm going to rock the house. I'm going to rock it one way or the other. It's my life's mission.
All right. And I am with you, Rome. I feel that what's being done with our food to our children is a crime against humanity. For the audience, in terms of fluoride in the water, fluoride makes you docile. It dumbs you down. It makes you apathetic.
Yes.
It takes away your willpower to conquer addictions. You kind of walk around in circles doing the same dumb thing over and over like a robot. It also, and this is the real tragedy, is it stifles your imagination. You suffer a loss of creativity, and not to mention the ability to think critically, and an inability to manifest. We came here on this planet as creators, and we're unable to make positive manifestations. And it also makes us feel separated from others and separated from source energy. That's just fluoride in the water. And then you've got GMOs, genetically modified organisms in the food. And I know you could tell us a thing or two about these genetically modified organisms. What's one thing that disturbed you about these GMOs in the food? Rome.
Well, they make their own seed. The chemicals are in the corn, not outside the corn.
Right.
And when the bugs eat it, their stomachs explode.
Yes, that was very scary.
So what do you think that does to our stomachs?
Well, that leads to leaky gut syndrome, and children are dying from leaky gut. And there's so many gastrointestinal diseases that not just children are suffering from, but adults are suffering from them. Inflammatory diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, autism, heart disease, diabetes, you name it. All of these inflammatory diseases, the studies are finally in on genetically modified organisms, and I was extremely disturbed when I found this connection. They suppress the autoimmune system and the allergies. Oh my God, for years I've been trying to figure out, I eat so well, why am I still suffering from these allergies? So Rome, would you, before we run out of time, would you please do that speech for us that you did?
No problem.
All
Okay.
right.
Hi, my name is Rome Diesel, and I'm 8 years old. My mother does everything she can to buy me the healthiest foods possible. She knows, and so do I because of her, that things like MSG, sodium nitrate, high fructose corn syrup, BHT, food coloring, artificial preservatives, and now GMOs are all bad for us. Most all those things that I just listed for you are on the labels of foods that we buy. So my mom could choose not to buy the foods that she knows are not good for me. However, foods containing GMOs are not listed. This is a problem. Some of my friends have food allergies and cannot eat certain things. They have found that foods containing GMOs make them feel pretty sick, so they try to avoid them. But because GMOs are not labeled, all anyone can really do to avoid them is to buy organic. However, we believe there are some very good non-organic foods too, and we would buy them if you knew everything that was in them, not just partially what is in them. I'm here today to ask the City Council to please endorse Proposition 37. Label GMOs so that my mom can know what she's buying and so that all the moms out there can make the best choices for their children. Think of it as an insurance policy, ensuring the health of all future generations to come. Thank you so much for listening.
And thank you, Rome, for coming here and joining us tonight.
And so you said it was a standing ovation.
Oh my God, he got a standing ovation. He couldn't even finish it.
Wow.
I mean, people were clapping before he could even finish. And I was just so inspired. I ran up to him and I said, "You are my hero. You've got to be on the show." And he looked at me and he said, "And I wrote it myself."
I did my own research. I went to Dr. McCullough's website.
Yes.
And I went to his library and I just sat there and I just kept reading and that's how I learned all about GMOs and
Right. And you know,
Wonderful.
you know what he made me think of was that scripture that said, "And a child will lead them all."
Yes.
And unless you become like a child, you will not inherit the kingdom. Kim Michaels, I know you're there in the audience. Could I get your response to little Rome Diesel and his the indigo children that are that I wanted to discuss tonight? They come here just aware and conscious that they have a purpose, that they have a divine plan, and they want to help humanity. And I believe that little kids like Rome and Daniel, that they and Dr. Sarah's daughter last week, that they're here to teach us. So could you comment on that for the audience?
Well, I think we obviously all have a divine purpose and a divine mission, and I think it is true that there are children being born that are more advanced or more mature spiritually, and they remember this at an earlier age. But I don't think we should forget that we all have a child within us, and we all have a potential to really go beyond what we have been brought up to think is humanly possible.
And I think these children are reminding us of that potential that we have forgotten. And the scripture about unless you become like a little child, would you comment on that?
Well, I think this scripture really refers to the fact that when we grow up, it's like we put on a certain mind that's almost so sophisticated according to a worldly standard that we forget the simple things in life, the simple truths. And we all have the potential to go back to that. And I think that was what Jesus was reminding us of. We have almost the same concept in Zen Buddhism, where they talk about beginner's mind, and where we have the ability to tune in our hearts. And this is what I think Rome was doing. You know, he tuned into just a universal truth that we can argue about it forever, but the reality is that there are certain things we just shouldn't do. And when we turn into that, that becomes obvious to us. And all the arguments of the world don't really matter anymore.
Well, and you know what I see in little kids like Rome is that they see potential. They don't see problems. They see solutions.
Yes.
And we get stuck in, oh, it can't be done because the world says. I see Dr. Sarah,
Right.
you wanna say
Oh,
something.
there's children at 2 and 4 test out to be 98% creative.
Yes.
And divergent thinking. And as they get older, the more educated they are, the less divergent thinking, the less they're able to come up with different solutions to the same problem. By the time they're 14 to 16, they're like 2% in that creativity realm. And 72% of what most adults walk around believing is inaccurate. They're false beliefs. And that's the beginner's mind, or thinking like a child, goes back into creativity and allowing yourself to wonder, is this even true?
And I was listening to Rome, and he said, I went and did my own research. I love that. He's thinking for himself, and you're not taking no for an answer. So I'm so delighted, Rome and Nikki, that you guys rushed out here in all of this traffic to join us tonight. And I want to encourage all of you to do what Rome did. Be the change that you want to see in the world, and join us. The work is there's still a lot of work to be done, because millions of dollars are being spent on advertising to tell people to vote no on Prop 37, to label foods by big companies who have a vested interest in genetically modified foods. Dr. Sarah, you had a quote
I
from...
I have a great quote from Joseph Campbell.
Love him.
And we have heroes. Our children are our heroes.
Yes.
The work of the hero is to slay the tenacious aspect of the father, the ogre king, and release from its band the vital energies that will feed the universe. This can be done either in accordance with the father's will or against his will.
Kim Michaels, I know you're there, and I would compare that ogre that we're supposed to slay, that would be like Oedipus Rex, to the ego. What are your thoughts on that quote by Joseph Campbell?
I think it's very true. I think we are brought up to limit our creativity. Dr. Sarah was talking about this earlier, how so many children have this built-in creativity. And what happens to us is that as we grow older, we stop being creative, and instead we start adapting to these predefined systems. And I think that's one of the major problems in life, because how can we find solutions to the problems created by the system by thinking within the system? I mean, Einstein himself said, you can't solve a problem with the same state of consciousness that created the problem.
Absolutely.
And it's very, very true.
Well, and that's what we're looking at tonight with Daniel James Franklin, I first met him in my creative writing class a couple of years ago. Young, dynamic, teenager, and then you came back and took a literature class, right?
Right, it was just this past year.
Yeah, just this past year, he came back and took a literature class from me, and then he just very nonchalantly, very shyly said, "Oh, I have a gift for you, Dr. Grant. Where's that book? Can you hold it up for us?"
It's actually right here.
Okay, Red Devil, and he said, "Yeah, I wrote this when I was 16, and it's published." And, I looked at the title and I was like, Red Devil, I don't like the horror, horror, science fiction, that kind of genre. That's not mine. But then as soon as I started reading it, it was just very gripping. And then I saw that you were telling a totally different story, and it kept me involved in the story. And I was so impressed with the maturity of the storyline for a 16-year-old. So could you tell the audience what inspired you to want to write at 16 years old a novel like this that's dealing with suicide and drug addiction and death and redemption?
I've been writing ever since I can remember. It's just something that I've had a passion for.
You said you were about 8 years old.
Right, about 8 years old, just like Rome. And there was just one day where I just started writing, and I could not stop. It just was something that I had to do every day. So eventually, as I got older, these short stories, page stories, they turn into 100-page stories and 200-page stories. And eventually, I had this dream, and that's what Red Devil is based off of. It's based off a dream, and then...
Well, what did you hope to accomplish by writing this book?
Originally, when the thoughts were coming to me, and as I was writing, I didn't have any particular intention, but I knew that I needed to write it. I knew that there was a reason I was writing it, that there was something literally working through me, and it had to be put out there. Now that I'm talking with you, and as people come up to me, it's pretty clear.
And so tell the audience what you think that was about.
I'll tell you a story. I had a friend call me a few weeks ago, and he told me that he was thinking about committing suicide, and I spoke to him for a little bit. I told him, I think you should really read my book. He called me the next day and told me that he finished it, and he told me that it really spoke to him, and the elements and the themes in the story, he said, And
I honestly feel, Daniel, that book will speak to a lot of young people that are caught up in the throes of drug addiction. And you captured, that whole nightclub scene and the music, the type of music that they use. And there's certain types of drugs that are being used to lure these young people in. And Kim Michaels, you were going to comment for us right before commercial break about drugs and the energy drain, because what we're looking at, and in Daniel's book, he covers very clearly how certain drugs, maybe you can expound on that before Kim.
Definitely. I think drugs in general, anything from over-the-counter drugs to street drugs, it really it puts you in a different state than who you
alters,
regularly are.
Yeah, the mind.
And I think it comes down to everything. It's really a sedative. You're stifling your creativity, your imagination, all these things.
And some of them make you suicidal, like the Red Devil pill.
In the book, it's a fictional drug.
Right.
But
I mean, it's similar to some of the ones that are out there on the market.
Yeah.
And hallucinogenic.
Yes. It just changes your mind, and sometimes it takes you to a very dark place. I've seen these things.
And it was very dark. In the book.
Very dark.
It was scary. And if we could just get more young people to sit down and read, you and I were talking about that, all of the stimuli, the cell phones, the technology.
There's so many distractions. For my generation, the cell phones, the internet, social networking.
Media,
everything is there to fill up our time. We don't have any time to really look inside ourselves and maybe create something.
And create
meditate,
and read.
you know, pray, whatever it is.
Now, Kim, I've held you off long enough. Okay, so I know you've got something to add to this discussion.
Well, let's do it very simple. We all know that our physical bodies have something called the immune system.
Yes.
And what it does, it prevents us from taking in bacteria or viruses that are harmful or that can kill the body.
Right.
Well, let's just say that our minds also has an immune system. And our minds are really energy fields. And so what can happen is that there are certain things that will neutralize our immune system. And drugs is obviously one of them, because what we do with the mind is, you know, the physical body, the immune system functions almost without us being consciously aware of it. But that's not the way it is with the mind. We have to be conscious in order to say no to certain things.
There you go.
But of course, there are many things in the society, like Dr. Sarah was talking about. We all grow up, basically we're programmed to neutralize our mind's immune system, because we are programmed to neutralize our inner knowing, our intuition of what's right and what's not right. And I really feel that that has a lot to do with what you were talking about, Sarah, because if we are not brought up to know who we are as spiritual beings,
Yes.
where we think we are either sinners or we think we are just sophisticated animals, we have no sense of purpose in life.
Right.
Yes.
Right? And what we've seen with these two, Rome and Daniel, is that even at a very young age, you can know that you have a sense of mission and purpose in life. But we are not actually in the Western world brought up with that.
Yeah.
And so most children don't realize that. And when you become a teenager and you think, well, it doesn't really matter what I do, so why should I say no to drugs? It's just the adults saying, just say no, but they don't tell me why.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons to say no is that it really limits your creativity, and it actually destroys your psychological immune system.
And your will.
Yes.
And not to mention your brain cells.
Yeah, because that's part of your immune system, is that you can consciously say no, because I don't want to do this.
Well,
Because I know this affects me and limits my choices.
Well, you know, Kim, I remember being a child and growing up around literally everybody in my family was an alcoholic. They all drank. They were weekend alcoholics, so you couldn't tell them that they were alcoholics. But oh my goodness. And I watched their behavior and the loss of inhibitions, the loss of boundaries. It was just, for a child to watch this with adults, it was embarrassing. You know, I would just look at this and I thought, whoa, I never want to be like that. And so one of the things that I vowed as a child was that I grew up in the 60s, and my uncle was growing marijuana on the farm and rolling his own joints, and they were passing it around like it was cigarettes. And so it was just like normal, the alcohol and the drugs, but I chose consciously not to do it because I didn't want anyone taking over my free will. That there was already enough of coercion and people trying to force me to do things I didn't want to do, and men trying to molest me, and me having to fight, my fight for myself. And I thought, there's no way I'm surrendering it, to a drug.
And alcohol is one of the most powerful. It affects every organ in our body and our brain, and it depresses it all. Tylenol and alcohol together, deathly for your liver. And people quite often, because they're in pain, wind up...
They combine it.
They combine it because they're not even aware.
Literally was in a coma for weeks and almost died from Tylenol for her liver. And it was actually the prescription Tylenol.
It's amazing. And then the street drugs stay in our spinal cord. It stays in our brain. And it literally turns parts of us into mush and sand, breaking up those neuronal logical thought processes up into illogical paranoid thoughts.
And that's the thing, the reason why I wanted you here, Daniel, is because, being a professor and working with young people and, having 2 kids myself, and if it's not the GMOs or the food or the fluoride in the water or the chemtrails in the air, then you've got the cigarette smoke and you've got the drugs and the alcohol and the peer pressure and all this.
Fluoride.
And and it's just, it's overwhelming as a parent different, and you want these kids to reach their potential. And I see so many, well, you know, I don't see as many as gifted and as talented as you are, but I mean, you know, I do run across these exceptionally gifted and talented kids, and then I see them on drugs, and I see them, you know, literally throwing their potential away, or being so confused and walking around in a fog and not knowing what to do with it, and just having these gifts, but they're unable to apply them. So, Kim, that's one of the real reasons why I'm so passionate about the physical body and treating it and honoring it as your temple, because, you know, Buddha did say that this is our vehicle for enlightenment. And how are we going to get back to one with the divine if we cannot, because of fluoride? We don't even have, we know better, we want to do better, but because of the accumulation of the fluoride in our pineal gland specifically, with it encasing it and shrinking it and putting this hardened core on it, we literally lack the willpower. I see so many people who say, yeah, man, I hate these cigarettes. I don't want to be smoking this, but I can't stop. They literally can't. So, Kim, once again, I'm calling on you to address that. You know, we need some help. And I know you have the Transcendence Toolbox, so talk to us.
Well, what we have on Transcendence Toolbox is a lot of practical tools for people who are spiritually inclined. You have to be somewhat spiritually open, because what you can do is you can invoke spiritual light as a defense system around your energy field and around your mind, so you don't take in all of the negative energy, because we are literally, as you also talked about earlier, we are being exposed to an awful lot of negative information.
Yeah.
And we have an information pollution, I think.
Yes.
But I actually would like to just reach back to what you were talking about, because when I was a child, I had a very similar experience to you, that there were certain things I just knew I could not partake of, because I knew I had a purpose in life. I didn't have any clue what it was.
I didn't either.
I had no idea. But I just knew that I couldn't, at a young age, ruin my life. And I see so many teenagers who do this because they don't have a sense of that purpose. And so they think it doesn't really matter. But already in your teenage years, or even earlier, you can have your life set on a track that prevents you from fulfilling your mission.
Absolutely.
And you see these kids like Rome, who at 8 years old knows he has a mission in life. Well, we all have that potential. We all have a mission in life. We all have a purpose, and we all have a potential to help bring our society forward, but also to bring ourselves forward in consciousness. And I remember, you know, when I was very young, my father said to me, you know, if you drink one beer, you kill 1,000 brain cells. And then he said, for a guy with as big a brain as mine, that's not really a problem. But in your case, I'd be worried. And I thought, well, you know, there's some truth here. I'm definitely not wanting to kill brain cells. And so you couldn't force me to drink a beer, you know. And because I just knew that, as you said, the physical body, I know I'm a spiritual being, but I need a physical body to express myself in this world.
Yes.
And part of my mission is to express myself in this world. And if I destroy the body's ability to be a vehicle for my spiritual mission and for my mind, I can't fulfill that mission.
Oh, thank you.
And I just couldn't let that happen.
Well, thank you so much for affirming that, Kim, because I'm always saying that I run across, you know, because I hang in the spiritual circles, and I run across these people that are very, very spiritual, and they're very, very focused on their spirituality, and they will just eat the worst diets, and they'll have all kind of diseases and pains, and there's just absolutely no balance there. And then I run in the circles with the people that are just extreme about the food and the purification of the body, and then no balance over here with the spirituality. And so my whole thing is just trying to bring people back to the middle, and that's one of my real passions on Divine Love Talk, is to bring people into some sort of awareness that there is a middle ground, and that there are things that you can do. And just because you've done those things, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you're condemned to die because of it. I know when I first got the information about the GMOs, I know that if you put the question out there in the universe, it will always answer it for you. And I was doing my liquid fast, and I was going, why am I hungry all the time? And why is it that my gut is bloating? I'm just doing liquids, and what's going on with my digestion? And then sure enough, I got the documentary on genetic roulette about the GMOs, and I realized that all of this genetically modified food that I'd been eating since I was a child was stuck in my gut, and it wasn't going anywhere, and I had to change program. So before we leave, let me go over very quickly the things that you can do that will get rid of the GMOs in your gut. So first of all, you have to stop eating more genetically modified food. And the only way you're going to know is if you help us get the Prop 37 passed, okay? And even if it doesn't pass, we do have Trader Joe's that does label the food, and we do have Fresh and Easy.
Fresh and Easy, and then farmers markets.
And the farmers markets.
Farmers markets, connecting with the farmers one-on-one.
And you can also grow your own food. I met some people at that event, and they have these big hydroponic gardens that you can put on your patio, okay, and grow like 450 pounds of food. Wow. So there are a lot of alternatives, and there's community gardening. So you absolutely have to stop eating the GMOs and then start eating organic foods. And the other thing that I'm doing is I'm using bentonite clay with psyllium, with fiber, with organic fiber. And the bentonite clay actually has a negative charge, and it attaches itself to everything that's positive, which is bad for you, and it pulls the intestinal plaque, because that's where these little GMO critters like to hide, in your gut. And your gut is your secondary immune system. So that's the most important thing to clean out. And then your gut also has your endocrine system, which runs and regulates every organ in your body. So there's nothing more important than cleaning your gut out. So there's the bentonite clay with the psyllium, and you take it on an empty stomach in the mornings. See how simple it is? It really isn't that difficult, but you got to go organic. And so unfortunately, the only places I can eat now are raw food restaurants, because they're the only ones that I know that are certified organic, and I'm having to prepare all of my food at home. So for the GMOs, it's really that simple. Now for the fluoride, okay, you got to get out in the sun, okay, and what I've been doing is at the crack of dawn, I've been getting up, and it's only really safe to look at the sun the first hour of sunrise and the hour of sunset. So sunrise, sunset,
and to do it slowly. Start by having your eyes
10
closed
at a time.
Start out by having your eyes closed, and then slowly, a few seconds at a time.
But you can pretty easily get up to 10 minutes at a time. I mean, I now can do the whole hour, and just closing my eyes and opening them back up. But you have the galvanic rays of the sun, and they literally feed your body. And so everything is the full spectrum light that you're getting from the sun that time of morning. So that, and then you also turn around and make sure you don't have a hat on, and the base of your skull, you want to make sure that the sun is shining on that as well. So there's the sunlight. Then you want to detox your liver and make sure you use milk thistle and dandelion. There is vitamin D3, okay, which will enhance and rebuild your immune system. And there's this oil from the Russian skate fish, which prevents
oil.
Oh yeah, that's some good stuff. And you can buy it under Blue Ice. Under greenpasture.org. And Dr. Sarah, you had a really beautiful closing remark that you wanted to point out.
Beautifully. We were just talking that your body recreates itself every few years. Every cell in your body right now is remultiplying. And so love is the antidote to all that is. Whatever is coming up for you, the more that you can love what is, the more you activate your heart and the stem cells that live in your heart.
And also to think, no matter how bad or bleak or dark the situation is, I look at it now and I say, okay, thank you for showing up to let me know that I thought I had mastered that. That's something else that I really need to work on. So I honor you and I thank you for that. And when people do things to me that upset me, I might react for a second and then I go, okay, thank you for showing me that I'm still sensitive, okay, when I really shouldn't be. And Daniel, you had a beautiful comment that you wanted to share.
You were saying earlier that you were referring to the foods that we eat, but you could stretch this to everything. There's never a moment where you can't change or turn things around. And,
right.
one thing that just sticks out to me. It's just every passing second of your life is another chance to turn things around. And once you become educated of what you're doing wrong or the things that are wrong in your life, you're no longer ignorant, and you have to make that change. You're conscious.
All right. Absolutely.
Yes, beautiful.
And that was very, very beautiful. And Daniel, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for inviting me here. I had a good time.
Yeah, and for showing up in my classes and sharing your incredible work with me and with the world. And Kim, I want to say this to you. My daughter's not here tonight, but on the way here, she said to me, she said, Mom, I just want you to know how important those invocations are that you shared with me from Kim Michaels. It's really turning her life around in terms of she severely overweight. She found out that she had gout. She got really, really sick from it. And just having to fall down to get up and having the willpower to lose the weight, to gain her health back, she said, Kim, that she wouldn't be able to do this without those invocations. And she gets up by herself now in the morning and does them before I do them. So I wanted to share that. I wanted to share that with you. And I know you have a closing remark for the audience before we leave them tonight.
Well, I was really moved when I many years ago read that each cell in our body is renewed every 7 years. Yes. And you think about that and you say, why do we age? Why do we get sick? And the reason for this is that the cells are not recreating themselves in a pure form. They are recreating themselves based on the information that they have, which is partly stored in our DNA, as we know that's the carrier information, but it's also stored in our minds and energy fields. So really, the only way to avoid these diseases and age is to be very conscious of the information we have in our minds.
Yes.